Pardon me?
Before you go on, and Mike, I don't know if the public knows that there is, that you set up a website and all of these works in progress are listed on the website. Do you want to inform the public of that?
I didn't know that was the public consumption, actually. Well, the website has been set up. It was intended primarily as an unofficial website for the purpose of the committee itself, although there's no reason, since it's available on the web, anybody can't access it. Currently, the website has copies of all of the working documents that the FAC is dealing with. That includes all of the documented ideas, whether they've been approved by the committee or are still in progress, in working state. Minutes of the committee are on there. I think what else? I think that's pretty much it at the present time.
Can it be linked through the town website? Is it linked
Do
through-
not currently have a link through the town website. In fact, I talked with Greg and our IT fellow about doing that, and it can be done very easily, of course.
I would like to at least have point of contact up there for the fact, for people, if they have ideas, they can come to us. We can work with them on that town website, that would be like.
I would
Do you want
encourage.
to, do you want to reveal the address of your website or not?
Sure, go right ahead.
The only reason I'm reticent is that, I mean, there's nothing that's privileged information, but there are working papers up there, and I'd hate for someone to construe them as final documents. But this would be the only thing.
Well, then,
Some of the subjects on
okay.
there are sensitive, and we're collecting data, and
Mhm.
but I'm all for sharing. I like the fact that anyone in town can look at it, because we have nothing to hide, and I've said this before, we're naive in a lot of things. The subject that we're gonna talk about tonight, we may not be 100% on top of what this is all about, and so we're hoping the chief and his staff that he and I can help guide us. We tried to meet with them in advance a few times, and now I've met with the chief a few times, so we may not have all our facts right. So if people who go to that website and get the information, they contact us and let us know. We may have this information, or we may get more information. So the website I don't have off.
The website address, I mean, I can verbally give it. It's
Mhm.
kind of a string. Would be http://nrfac.home.comcast.net. No www. What I will do is I will get in touch with Gene and see about putting a
Putting a
link
link in
on the town website for
Okay.
that.
And by the way, I think the members of the FAC who put up the website did a great job, and they've got a standard format for documenting, as you can see in these reports here, board members, their work.
I'm gonna show it at the end of the presentation.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
So moving on more specifically with, this is what we call idea number 003A, Fire Department overtime. B will be police, but that's someone else. The first chart basically shows the prior history. Now, this information was taken from budget information. It's not actuals, and it may not be the final budget in each year, but it should be close enough to give some representative information. The second column, firefighter pay, is the total pay that's been budgeted for non-exempt personnel without overtime. Overtime is pretty obvious, and overtime as a percent of the total pay is in the last column. Some people, of course, compute overtime as a percent of the total pay, which is pay plus overtime. Obviously, that would make those numbers smaller. I just want to be clear as to how those numbers are computed. So there is a fair amount of overtime in the fire department, and I guess we've been having this for quite some long time. The primary reasons for the overtime, or how it's used, are to effectively backfill staff for long ambulance calls. The normal response for an ambulance call is 2 firefighters. If it appears that a transport must be made, or in cases where they must remain on site for an extended period, an immediate call goes out for 2 more firemen to backfill that, to bring the normal staffing back up to the right levels. Any overtime that's called in at that time will be paid for a minimum of 2 hours. And then, exhaust that 2 hours, another 2 hours, and so forth. Second, overtime is used for house and other fires, again, where more manpower is needed. First call will go out for off-duty firemen, I believe. Second would be for call firefighters, and somewhere in that mix, calls will go out for mutual aid. Anyone called in for a box alarm receives at least 3 hours of overtime pay. Finally, the category of sick, vacation, training, etc. Since we have been on such a minimal staff for many, many years, bare bones staff actually, the lack of any single individual requires somebody to come in and fill that position, and the only way that that happens is on overtime.
Alan, you made a statement that on callback, the minimum is 2 hours. I
Yeah.
thought it was 4. Am I
Callback on ambulance calls is 2 hours.
on ambulance calls?
You
Okay.
get paid $1 per hour after those 2 hours.
Okay.
On a building fire or struck box where we need large amounts of manpower, there's a number 3. And after that 3, they're paid hour per hour. There's no 4-hour minimum.
Okay, all right. I'm thinking of the
Police.
police. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so as I was saying, the remaining overtime is used for the person calls in sick, on vacation, or for training, or any such other purpose that would reduce normal staffing. Overtime is used to fill that gap, to bring the staffing back up to the 4 firemen that are normally on duty. Normally, it's 4 firemen, 1 is on dispatch, 3 are used for active purposes. Talking about overtime and how to reduce it, and the only realistic way to reduce the overtime is to increase staffing. But right now, staffing is at a minimum. And so the only way to get that overtime down is to increase staffing to the point where you don't need to always backfill for any purpose that requires overtime, that requires manpower. Next page, please. The basic proposal, and I would also say there's 2 other ideas that FAC ideas that deal with this subject. There are several that all dovetail and kind of tie together in one form or another. We'll be talking later tonight about number 11, which deals with dispatch, and idea number 27 also deals with fire department personnel issues. And again, all of these tend to dovetail because they deal with different aspects of the same problem. The basic proposal here is to reduce overtime, to use to use the savings from the reduced overtime to add additional firemen. And one proposal would be to reduce overtime sufficiently, or reduce overtime and add 4 firemen, or add 4 paramedic firemen, which could also address the 2 in, 2 out and the ALS issues that we talked about in the past. Perhaps after 1 year, the additional income from ALS could then fund hiring 4 additional paramedic firemen. And what we could do is, it seems like there's a good likelihood, what we could do is to reduce overtime, increase staffing, and provide these additional services and safety, the ALS and the 2 in, 2 out specifically, and perhaps some more revenue to the town. Next page, please. If we could leave the staffing requirements as present, and this may deal with some union issues. If the staffing requirements, which is currently 4 people, then there are some spare, there's at least 1 or 2 spare based on how far we take this thing, which could cover some additional overtime. In other words, if we had 5 personnel per shift, but our requirements to be held at 4, we have the ability to have 1 person out for some period of time without having to backfill out of overtime. Similarly, if there were 6, we might be able to lose 2. Again, this deals with safety, union issues, and many other things, and it's something that is not a recommendation specifically, but something that could be investigated. Similarly, some changes in dispatch, which will be talked about in some other proposals, could free up additional manpower and therefore allow some further reduction of overtime. Our actual recommendation, we'll switch the slide please, is that the TA work with Chief Harris to get the necessary information that will allow the Board of Selectmen to make a decision on the reduction of overtime, ALS service 2 and 2 out on this whole package. And that a firm deadline be established for that to occur. After which time the board be in a position to be able to make some decisions. And that's it.
Has a financial analysis been done associated with this? I mean, you've taken and said this is the amount of overtime. The overtime fills a number of different categories. Some of the straightforward ones would be vacation and sick time, vacation time, sick time, and then you've got the ambulance calls and your fire calls, which I assume the ambulance calls are significantly higher than fire calls. If I'm making the wrong assumption, Chief, speak up.
There's more ambulance calls than there are fire calls, but there's more calls for service than there are ambulance calls throughout the community. You will find 2,000 calls a year for service in the community.
Can you
Out of
define what
we
that?
do about 750 calls for EMS.
Could you define for us a call for service?
Call for service can be anywhere from car lockout, to house lockout, to a building fire, to a brush fire. Anything where people would call us and need a response from our department, and we would be sending that staff to that call. Assisting the police department, cutting somebody out of a car, that type of a situation.
This is
Steve.
Chief, just as clarification on that, not all service calls require overtime.
No. Not all service calls require overtime at all.
Right.
We've changed our department, the way we run our department, that we keep it down as low as possible. We send out the fewest amount of people, depending upon the call. I have a great staff back there. They work 4 people, and when the call comes in, the officer makes a decision whether he needs more staff or he can do it with the staff that he has. They'll start out with the staff that they have. If the call requires more personnel, we call back on overtime, people that come back and assist us in working with the call. Most calls we go out, and the duty crew, the 3 guys go out and handle it. There are a lot of calls when people call for smoke in the house, building fires and so forth. We need at least 8 people in the first 10 minutes. We can't wait until we get there and say, oh yeah, I guess you're right, and then call people in. As you know, fire grows double its size every minute. And what we do is we play a risk analysis game where my personnel sits down and decides that if they get a call and it's definitely a building fire or a car against a house that's on fire or something like that, they bring people back in. If they deem it's a car away from the house and it's in the middle of the highway, they send just what's available at the station. And if we have a second call, if it's a fire call and the crew is tied up, we call back the off-duty people and send them. If it's a medical aid, it's a second medical aid, we call a mutual aid community to send their ambulance. We try to get a police officer to go to that call because I don't have anybody left at that point because all of my personnel are at a call. On an ambulance call, we send 2 firefighters in the ambulance. One drives, one works in the back. And then we have a supervisor, which is a captain, and we have a guy on the desk. When those gentlemen go out and working at the call, they're tied up. If you get another call that comes in, the dispatcher notifies the supervisor, which is the captain of the fire department, gives them the information of what the call is, and at that point, the captain will either make a decision to leave that call. If it's a very minor call, if it's a car lockout, no kid in the car, they'll leave that call and go to the other call. If they're tied up at a call and they can't go, if it's a call that they can send an ambulance from another town, they'll do that and then send the police officer. If they're unable to get somebody else from out of town, we'll strike the box, bring our personnel in, and they come in quite fast. Guys have a pager system that works very well for us. All 9 members have radios. We're in constant communication with people. As soon as they come on, their pager goes off, they turn their radios on. Every man in the department has a radio at home with them. I have somebody on scene probably within a minute. Lots of guys have their gear in their car. They go to the scene. They'll call back, give us an update, what's going on, and try to keep, if we don't need 10 fire trucks or 50 people there, we'll call a code C response, which means that you drive at a normal pace. the thing is, it